She's Katy Montgomery. He's Justin Joseph. These best friends are serving subpoenas to bad advice weekly with Wrong Way Forward. Now, here's Katy and Justin.
So Katy and I are discussing pre-production, but we're going to go ahead and go live here because we were just talking about our viewer emails that I got a really mean one talking about how I have no hair or something to that effect. But anyway, welcome to this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward. I'm Justin Joseph here along with my best friend, Katy Montgomery. We are so excited to introduce this week. We have a new text line. So we'll repeat this throughout the show. If you have thoughts as we're talking about something, or if we want you to weigh in on whether Katy's right or I'm right, you can immediately text this line and say, Katy's got this one. You can give an instant feedback, et cetera, and we'll cover all of that on our next show. But the text line is 720-251-4450. So memorize that if you're driving so you can text us later, 720-251-4450. So last week or the last couple of weeks, we had a lot of viewer emails over some of our things we've talked about. Katy, gardening in the nude has been a big one, as well as Thanksgiving do's and don't do's. What have been your big takeaways?
Big takeaways is that I think people had a good Thanksgiving, but there are still little things that get under their skin and drive them crazy. And I think they're wondering, should they just keep their mouth shut, or is there a formal way to address that kind of, nipping at them? Exactly.
And so a couple of your emails on that. One of them said, my family goes around the table and lists what we're grateful for, but it's turned into a competition. Someone says, I'm grateful for this. And then someone tries to outplay them. I'm grateful for my new job. I'm grateful for my salary increase, whatever. What do you think about that?
Well, it's interesting because it reminded me when I used to work in headhunting, and we had a weekly meeting and everybody went around the table and talked about who they were representing and where the transaction was and whether or not it was likely to close. And we always had one colleague who would just list everything. He just thought it looked like he had the volume and that he was amazing. Oh, and I was like, let's keep this short and sweet. Let's get to the point. What's the objective of this? And I think that if I heard from that person, I would be like, look, there's no need to kind of, play into this competition. You be you. If you can bring a sense of humor to it, and be authentic to yourself. And, and here's the thing, all of this is in the eye of the beholder, right? Some things that I think are major accomplishments, other people, it barely is a blip on their radar.
Right. And half the time it's people who want to hear themselves talk or want validation from people around them. I remember when I was a television reporter and we would do what's called a scrum where, a police official would come out or something and all the reporters would be there to ask questions about whatever. And I made it intentional that I would never ask questions like, can you tell us what happened here? Can you tell us the name of the suspect? I would never ask a question unless the intention was to get an answer that nobody else would have, if that makes sense. So I felt like a lot of reporters, this reminded me of a lot of people who just wanted to talk for the sake of talking for validation. And I just never did that.
Yeah. And let's be honest, if you're taking something and you're thinking it's a competition and people are being braggy or being, over the top, my guess is you're not the only one around the table thinking that. So bring some levity to the situation.
And a pair of rolling eyes. You can just shoot them across the table, the person sitting across from you. Another interesting Thanksgiving email we got was this one, and this one kind of resonated with me. Thanksgiving, my family assigns dishes to avoid duplicates. Reasonable, right? Absolutely. Except I've been assigned the rolls for 6 years. Not mac and cheese, not potatoes, just rolls. So, I think that's kind of funny. It says, this year I tried to upgrade and bring a sweet potato casserole. My sister-in-law said, no, you can just bring bread. So how do I respectfully tell her that I have a master's degree and capable of more than opening a bag of potato chips or whatever this was? Which I think is kind of funny because I think that's happened to me a million times too. Like, you can bring bread.
My first thing is I'm like, you're lucky. That's easy. You don't have to plan that. You don't have to cook it. You don't have to worry about the dish. You don't have to, I would love it if I felt comfortable enough to just bring the easy thing off the shelf. That would make my life one less thing on the list of things to do.
But you love to entertain. So I would think you would love, do you remember when you used to make cream cheese and pickle pepper sauce?
and you ate every bite of it. I do love to entertain, but if I had to go to someone's house and, I have to tell you, I know a lot of people like me that are kind of stressed right before the holidays because they're trying to wind down work and they really want to enjoy the time. And it would be nice to not have to think about planning an entire dish. My other thing is, this is when somebody just needs to be curious. I think this sister-in-law was a control freak. And you do not take this personally, that this person has told themselves a story that the sister-in-law thinks they're incapable of doing anything.
Right.
I have a master's degree. Good on you. And you also have a sister-in-law that's a control freak. Let her control. Let her have it. Don't let it bother you, and don't make up a story and make it personal. This is 95% about her, not you.
And what I'm loving is I can't get my mind off of the pick pepper sauce and how you'd serve it with Triscuits. And I'm thinking you would not be caught dead bringing Triscuits to a dinner party now.
Justin, I'm a Southerner, and Triscuits are a staple. In addition to putting pick a pepper on cream cheese, you can also put a pepper jelly on top of cream cheese. And Triscuits is the suggested, vessel to eat that. So
Yes.
no, I would not be embarrassed carrying a Triscuit box.
I would tell you, to our viewers, if there's one takeaway you've had in 14 episodes, try cream cheese with pick a pepper sauce. Comes in a little bottle. You'll spend an hour at the supermarket looking for it, but it probably will be there. And it's pretty amazing.
It is. It's amazing. And with Christmas coming up and Christmas parties, you'll be the hit. And it's only about $5 dish.
Okay, well, I don't know about all of that. But anyway, moving on. And then our last question we got was from someone who had the HOA nudity dispute. They say, "Dear Justin and Katy, I live in a townhouse community. My neighbor sunbathes topless on her back patio." So not quite nudity, but still, can be aggressive. Honestly, good for her. But our HO president, a man who looks like he hasn't seen the sun since 1998, told her she is in violation of community modesty expectations. She responded, then stopped staring. Good response. Now the whole community is picking sides. Where does modesty stop and personal rights begin? And is this the HOA's business or Harold's problem? That's kind of interesting because it's not quite full nudity. And I think I've been in situations where I've seen someone bathing topless and I didn't know what to do when I lived in apartments.
Well, I think what's interesting is I've never lived somewhere where there's, kind of HOA rules, but my sister lives in a condominium. And their HOA rules are so specific that if you have a pot for your plants on your front doorstep and it's not in the neutral palette, you will be fined. So my thing would be, you know what? Nobody reads the HOA rules before they, put down the mortgage and sign the contract and move in. But if it's clearly there that there are modesty rules and that you can't be in the nude, you signed on and you have to follow the community rules. Now, the way to kind of handle that is to go back to the HOA, flash your titties and say, look at these, two beautiful melons. Wouldn't you want to see them? Can we change the HOA rules and see what happens? But otherwise, I don't think she has any kind of recourse.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not as big of a deal as gardening in the nude. So, neighbor, you probably need to tell Harold to calm down. Okay, so if you have thoughts, text us at 720-251-4450, or if you have other things that have happened at Thanksgiving or thoughts on gardening in the nude or sunbathing topless, shoot us a text again, 720-251-4450. So, Katy, what are we talking about this week?
So, Justin, I don't know if you know this, but, right after Thanksgiving, I always saw that my Instagram blew up with these engagement photos of these girls just flashing their rings right into the camera. And so I got curious and did a little Google search, and I'm like, when are most engagements happening? And what's crazy is the period between Thanksgiving and Valentine's Day is known as engagement season, and 40% of all engagements happen during that window. So we thought that we would kind of have an episode today that's kind of around the etiquette and maybe some potential wrong way forward with things having to do with engagement rings and engagements. And so we did get a viewer write in, and maybe I can share that, and then we can come back after the break and say whether or not that's the wrong way forward.
That's perfect.
So give me 1 second. So this is one of our most loyal listeners. She has listened to every episode, so we adore her. But says when she was in her late 20s, she just completed her doctoral degree and was searching for a faculty position. Her resume and publications were exceptional. She was the talk of the town, and she was starting to get a lot of interviews. And then one of her mentors gave her this advice, which she considered completely wrong. She recommended I wear a wedding ring on all my job interviews, even though I was single and not interested in marriage. Her rationale was absolutely wild. She said for jobs at small liberal arts colleges in small towns or southern states, that without a ring, they will assume that you're not likely to stay, that single women have a reputation for leaving, that a ring shows more maturity, that she was young, and that a ring would have her taken more seriously. And then, this is the kicker, another reason that she should wear a ring is that it proves you have a life. And so, despite her packed resume and all of her interest, it would show that she had something outside of her work. And so the question is this the wrong way forward? And so when we come back after the break, you're going to hear both of our takes on this. You've been listening to Wrong Way Forward, where bad advice goes to die and then gets resurrected just so we can roast it again.
If you're enjoying the chaos, hit like and subscribe and come back every Thursday for new episodes.
Have a new topic or some disastrously bad advice you want to dissect? Email wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Include your contact info.
Now back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katy and Justin podcast.
And we're back. And before Justin and I give our take on this advice about whether or not someone should wear an engagement ring who's not actually engaged, for a number of reasons for a job interview, we'd love to hear from y'all. So again, the text number is 720-251-4450. If you agree, just text back agree. If you disagree, text back disagree. And we'll try to give those results, next week.
Yeah, we'll keep that text line open for 24 hours. So that way we can do a condensed poll on it. So again, 24 hours from when we air this episode, text us whether you agree or disagree.
So Justin, do you agree or disagree with this advice?
Well, look, I am a big fan of manipulation, as you know. So, I mean, if I can go in and I think everybody who goes into an interview, assuming that they want this job, they should use every tool in their disposal to get it. And that means researching the person who's interviewing you, looking at their social media. I remember when I interviewed for my first job as a prosecutor in Denver, and it's a long story, but Denver does not hire new prosecutors. I had moved down to Colorado Springs because they hire new prosecutors. They will hire you before bar results came out. But the day bar results came out down there, my name was not on the list. And so I was fired immediately. That weekend, I moved all the way back up to Denver. The next week, the bar people called and said, we made a mistake. You did pass the bar. Colorado Springs heard about this, said, can you come back? I said, I'm not going back there. Long story short is that a bar examiner who was on the board heard this, and they were prosecuting in Denver, and went to the lead prosecutor and said, interview Justin, this happened to him. So long story short, I'm in the interview with this person, and at one point I say, I feel like all of this not happened for a reason, but I feel like there was some element of God involved. This man, I knew he was a huge Catholic, and so I used that to my advantage, and he hired me on the spot. Anyway, so that's a long way of saying I'm a big fan of using whatever advantage you can. So if you think that maybe having a ring on your finger may give you some commonality, I think that's fair. What I don't think is fair in the advice is that it shows you have a life, because I know plenty of people who wear engagement rings who do not have lives. What are your thoughts?
I think this is probably the dumbest and worst advice I've probably ever heard, and that says a lot. I think, number one, what if you get the job and then you move to town? And I can tell you, having worked in education, they usually try to take care of your significant other. You're really kind of folded into the community. What do? Do you start to kind of perpetuate this long-term lie? Do you say, oh, now that, I've actually started the job, we've broken off and we've divorced? What if people start to ask details? How do you keep all of those stories straight? What happens when you start drinking? What do you tell Mary versus what do you tell Bobby? I think it's unethical, and I think it's pure out lying. And I think it's a story that you can't keep up. I don't think it's using something to your advantage. I think it is, it's putting forth a falsehood. And I also think it really, really bothers me as a feminist that a mentor is kind of promoting this. Well, you're a female and a woman, and if you are not married and you don't have a husband. And so I think it is very old-fashioned. I think it puts women back. And I think actually having a mentor in the space that thinks that makes me very nervous for future graduates in this program, to see if they're given a fair shot in a professional setting.
Well, spoken like an executive coach and a feminist, and leave it to me to not think through the potential issues here. I was like, yeah, just do it. It sounds like a great idea. Having said that, I'm not sure that the advice was go in there and lie. I think it was put a ring on. And, I think there's HR rules, or I think there's legal reasons to prevent someone from asking, are you married, in an interview. I think that I remember that from law school. So I think it's more just about what it looks like than carrying through on a lie. What do you think? Am I wrong there?
Well, I think just because something is illegal, I use this example all the time, and, I don't practice law at all, but even if your case has no merit, that doesn't stop somebody from suing you, right? Like somebody can sue you and you still have to go through and have the case dismissed and spend money on legal representation. So just because something is illegal doesn't mean that people don't do it. And even if there's an HR rule, that doesn't mean people follow. And, and this is something that I think, even if they weren't to directly ask you, the assumption that would be made, and then as you became kind of friendly in the workplace, even if somebody didn't do it with kind of malicious intent or working outside of some kind of HR or legal protections, I think it would be normal to kind of talk about someone's, kind of private life. Like, how was the transition? Did your partner find work? Have you found, a local community? Are you getting adjusted? How's it going? So, I think that the likelihood of it not coming up, even if that person in a very kind of innocent way, I think it's impossible to maintain that.
Let me ask you the question from the other side, other way. Mm-hmm. Even though we agree that it's not the right way forward to do this, do you think that the advice giver was correct, that it may give you a leg up, that the world is so jaded that there may be a connection there, or you may be looked at more favorably, right or wrong, because you have an engagement ring on?
I mean, this might be very naive on my part, but I am really hoping that that is no longer the case. And I think particularly as we are seeing marriage rates go down, we're seeing women and men getting married later in life, that it is more the norm now to be out of a PhD program in your late 20s and not be married, because the average age of marriage is moving up. So I would hope that that's not the case. Now, if you were looking to make a connection to a particular region of the country and it was factually correct, my fiance is completing his medical residency in Boston, and that's why it's of great interest for me to work for, Boston College, BU, Harvard, Emerson, name the university. I think that that's fine, but that's also honest, and also shows a commitment to the area and the region. But I think I'm really hopeful enough, and particularly in education, which I think tends to be maybe less conservative in that space. I mean, they tend to be places where, it's open thinking and, an open discussion. I hope so. So I would hope that that's not the case.
I asked a question because, and maybe this is a topic for a future episode, but as you know, I have a very good single girlfriend who's single. She's now 43 or whatever. And she really, especially as she ages, is of the opinion that single women are treated differently than married women. And she could cite 10 examples. And so I don't know whether that's true or not. That's her experience. Have you felt that?
I mean, I'm sure that I could probably name places or times, but I mean, I also live in DC tends to be a fairly liberal city. Women, I can't think of a single female friend where we're not in a, both people are gainfully employed. It's a highly professional city. And so I haven't seen that personally, but I wouldn't be surprised if it exists in some places. It's going to be interesting. I'm sure some people might see kind of the backlash, right? The other way, where it's like, if you don't have children or you're not married, people might see you as a greater commodity because you might have more flexibility and willing to work more hours, and you don't have the constraints, that people might assume, which I think that is an assumption. I don't think that's correct, of people, that are married and have children.
It reminds me of, I was at, this was right before I met Josh, so it would have been, 2006 or something. And I was sitting at my desk in the newsroom, and this really annoying anger on the other side. She just had an annoying face. You know those people.
Yes.
And she, and anyway, it was Valentine's Day or whatever. And she got, of course, she gets a big, huge bouquet of $3,000 roses, and they're just delivered to her desk. And she just turns around to me and she goes, "Did you get flowers?" And I said, "No." And she goes, "Oh, you don't have a Valentine's." And I literally, I wanted to punch her in the face. And I did not have a Valentine. But so that's, I think, my point is there's some people that are just like that. And it's like, ugh.
Well, but again, what makes someone do that? Like, why is it that hurts us so bad when it's
and that it was trauma? I mean, I remember it specifically.
Yeah, and this person's an a-hole. Like, who says that? But why is it that we as people take that so internally, and it hits us so hard when it's like, something must have crawled up this woman's ass to act like that. Right?
Oh, totally. And it obviously really bothered me because I literally remember it to this day. But I think that's what Kelly, my friend, was saying. So anyway, what are your thoughts? We want to know. Text us on our text line 720-251-4450. Let us know what your thoughts are. Have you been in these situations before? We have more engagement questions and bad advice coming up on the other side. We'll be right back. Thanks for streaming Wrong Way Forward, the weekly reminder that advice is usually free for a reason. We call out bad advice wherever it hides: boardrooms, break rooms, and even book clubs.
Enjoying this dumpster fire? Like, subscribe, and check back every Thursday for new episodes. Want us to roast your favorite piece of nonsense? Email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to include your contact info. We're not psychic, just judgmental. And now, back to Wrong Way Forward.
Roasting the worst advice ever. Welcome back to the Katy and Justin.
And we're back with our last kind of question advice regarding engagements. And this is the age-old question. I think this probably was something that we actually talked about in law school. But if there's a broken engagement, who needs to return the ring? And is that required? And so just to give you a little bit of background, here's the question. My ex-fiance wants the engagement ring back that he purchased for me a couple of months ago. I ended the relationship because I could no longer tolerate his obsessive behavior and constant blame for everything wrong in our relationship. He gave me the ring and I signed papers for checkups and everything, yet he still claims he will take me to court. So the question here is, if she broke off the engagement, is she required to return the ring? What are your thoughts, Justin?
Well, I can tell you, I practice divorce law. I have a business where I do people's divorces and sell their homes to pay for that. So I work with this situation a lot. And I can tell you, those are low conflict divorces, but I have a very good friend who just went through a very high conflict divorce. There was a lot of money involved and she had a very expensive ring. And I can tell you legally, the ring is an asset and it gets divided. It goes on the worksheet and you divide it in half. That either means someone keeps it or that gets sold, but legally it gets cut down the middle, so to speak. So in terms of how I feel about it, if I were the man and I gave, I think one of the other topics we were talking about, whether it's 2 months salary, that used to be the old rule. And I spent on it, I'd want it back. But that shouldn't surprise anybody who's listened to this podcast. I don't just get the ring, get everything.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I would think if I broke off the engagement, and this could have been for whatever reason, legitimate reason, the person's a horrible person, I think I would return the ring. I think for me personally, that would be a gesture of, this ring was symbolizing us to get married. I have broken off the engagement. I would return it. I think, though, at the end of the day, if I was someone, if I had proposed to someone with a ring, I would say, that is a gift and I want you to keep it. However, I think that's all saying, before things, it's War of the Roses and things are horrible. But I think that if I were ending the engagement, I would have the symbolic gesture. I also would say, yes, you can repurpose a ring, but I would think, yes, please take the ring back. This is no longer representative of what we thought it was. And I don't think that I would want to keep it. I wouldn't want to have ownership of it if I was the one who broke it off.
It is just so funny because you and I are best friends, but we just, some topics I can say how you're going to see the world, and I'm sure you can say how I'm going to see the world. I knew you were going to say that. And I just, again, I'm like, go to war.
So of course you did.
And would it make no difference to you if you dated someone and he was Elon Musk and the ring was worth $5 million? You wouldn't say, well, maybe I'll keep 2.5 of it.
Well, first of all, why did you say Elon Musk? Because I can't get past that. I'm like, gross. I mean, I don't want to be part of the, compound and the harem and be one of the, 11 people who's, producing children. Gross. It would take much more than a $5 million ring.
Well, let me ask you the question: does it change your calculus if it's a $3 ring versus a $5 million ring?
I don't think so. But also, I think probably, and people are going to think I'm crazy, I think a $5 million ring is probably really tacky.
Yeah.
I mean, like, nobody needs to have, even if you have perfect clarity cut, nobody needs a ring that big on their finger. And I also, people who are actually watching, I have itty bitty hands. It would be extra tacky on my hand. So, no, I just don't think that I would want that. I wouldn't want to be affiliated with it. And I think it would have a lot of negative connotations. And this is, again, if I broke it off, I think that I would feel responsible and I would feel guilty to keep it.
Okay, well, what if he broke it off and he said, "I want the ring back"? And let's not use 5 million. That's hyperbole. What if it was a $400,000 ring?
If he broke it off and wanted to take it back, I'd be like, well, that's really tacky. Like, but I probably would be like, this is not worth it. And I would give it back. And I'd be like, God bless the next girl who gets my cast off ring.
Okay. To all of Katie's good girlfriends who listen to the show, we need you to write in and tell us why Katie's wrong way forward on this. And if she ever gets married and then divorced, we're going to need all hands on deck.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Goes back to the 2 month salary, right? So for those of you who are not familiar with this, De Beers, which was a famous diamond company, basically started it as a marketing campaign to say, isn't your love worth 2 months salary? It's a made up rule. There is not this kind of set rule. And basically all of the data has shown that most people don't follow the 2 months rule. People on the kind of lower income bracket do, but the average of kind of a ring based on kind of salary is usually about 2 weeks. I have my mother's ring that my father had made for her on their 10-year anniversary, and there's 10 diamonds around it that represent the 10 years, but the way he laid out the diamonds is 4 kids, and then there's 6 in the family. And so it's got a lot of thought to it. I think I would probably wear that on my wedding ring finger, and I would be like, get me a lovely piece of art.
I love that too. My mom got her engagement ring in a garage sale. Isn't that funny?
Well, and my dad proposed to my mom. They had just gone to a wedding. They left early. They went to a pizza restaurant and were drinking Pabst Blue Ribbon. And my mom said, Chaz, everyone's getting married. Are you ever going to propose? And he took the flip top can and proposed with my mom with the Pabst Blue Ribbon metal tab.
That is the sweetest story. And I can hear your mother I can see your mom and hear your mom saying that.
Oh, she totally would have said it, but she got him and it worked out and they were really happy. So
yeah, that's a good story. Engagement stories. It's funny because it's such a sweet thing to do during the holidays, but it's also there's so much that comes with it. And divorces are the highest during the holidays too. Isn't that funny that highest marriage, highest divorces, holidays? That's how much emotion goes into this time of year.
It's true. But Justin, before we kind of close out, and I also want to give a plug for our email because some people, do not like to text long things. And I do like to hear if you have any kind of advice, snafus, is to email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com. But Justin, let's end on a high note for engagement.
Okay.
So tell me.
Tell you a good story about engagement?
Or just end on a high note rather than divorce and stress and value of rings.
Okay. Well, I think that the truth is there's a reason why everybody does this during this time of year. I mean, it really does bring all of this time of year, as you see all of the colors come out and the Christmas lights, it really does bring out that sort of touchy feeling part of friends and family. And so, the holidays have stressed me out more than usual this year. I really just, like I said, I'm declining holiday parties. Having said that, that's the one part of it that I do like is those kind of all those feels that come with it as you get into the season. And so that's the best I can say on a high note. What would you like to say?
I would say for all of those newly engaged couples, I think be excited about the hope and the future and the combining of families and everything that's wonderful. It is a very joyous occasion. And The right way forward would be to celebrate and look forward, onward and upward.
Sounds good. And if it doesn't work out, don't just get the ring, get everything. All right. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward. We'll see you back here next week.
All right, that's a wrap on this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward. Remember, the only thing worse than taking bad advice is giving it.
If you've liked what you've heard, like, subscribe, or follow us wherever you stream podcasts. And if you've got a topic or need some advice we'll probably regret giving, email us at wrongwayforwardpodcast@gmail.com.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Wrong Way Forward.